every week there's a theme, and the theme that's emerging here this week is manipulation of psychology, because you can't physically control people when you're talking about billions. You can do it in certain areas, and they want to do it totally by connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence. But at the moment, you can't do that. Too many people. So you have to do it by controlling their psychology so they behave the way you want them to do and react the way they want them to do. And one of the great points of access to human psychology is emotion. In fact, it's the best and easiest source of access to human psychology. What's been happening, not least to the Greta Thunberg phenomenon, and by the way, if you've not been in to davidicke.com too much this week, I can't believe why you wouldn't, but if you haven't, there's been 3 very good video reports about the background to Greta Thunberg and the 1% connections. It's extraordinary. It's the most obvious setup you'll ever see. And this is why she gets invited to Davos. A 16-year-old gets invited to Davos to berate the 1% about what they're not doing about climate change. Well, of course, they want to do it because they want to transform the global economy by using that as an excuse. But one of the outcomes, consequences of this Greta Thunberg propaganda, let's have a quick sip, is that it's causing a lot of distress and anxiety among young people who fear that their world's going to end. For all young people listening to this, it ain't. What's going to end, if people keep buying this crap, is freedom. And so these stories keep emerging now about, anxiety among the young over climate change. And we've come to this headline. A university in England, University of Derby, offers climate change anxiety classes for staff and students worried about the future of the planet. The University of Derby has introduced climate anxiety classes for staff and students worried about climate change and anxious about the state of the ecosystem. And these eco-anxiety classes aim to tackle feelings of anger, guilt, and grief of staff and students. And they've been involved in workshops to combat their sense of loss. Well, actually, because of an increase in carbon dioxide, the world is getting greener because plants and trees suck carbon dioxide, without which they'd all be dead, out of the atmosphere. These sessions have been on offer to climate activist groups in Derbyshire, as well as some of the faculties at the university. They've lost their bloody faculties since August, with one student claiming the climate emergency makes her feel as though she isn't going to have a future. This is the abuse of children and young people that's going on, because they have to, we're back to the theme of the podcast this week, they have to make people frightened of not surviving to get them to hand their power away to the authorities to protect them from not surviving. It's so simple. The psychology is so simple. Speaking to the BBC, Dr. Jamie Bird, Deputy Head of Health and Social Care Research at Derby University, said people suffer climate grief as they can see what they are losing. Well, explain what is being lost. One student said, "It makes me very anxious because every time I look at the news, I rarely see good news about the environment. It just makes me think I'm not going to have a future. Another student said that the climate emergency makes her feel isolated and lonely, and also said she felt guilty because she doesn't have the power to change it. Oh, well, that's not a problem. Just give your power to the authorities to change it, or not, and then everything will be fine. That's the psychology scenario and background to climate change in a nutshell. Now, another thing, see, again, just like the virus hysteria, climate change also ticks all the boxes. And the fact that both are being promoted out of Davos and the 1% should make those red lights flash yet again. So here we have a story. You know, of course, we've been talking and writing about chemtrails for a long time, where they're putting out this stuff, this toxic stuff with heavy metals, etc., in it, out of aircraft and crisscrossing the sky all over the world, chemtrails. And of course, what they've been saying is it's all a conspiracy theory. Well, actually, it ain't. And this is a story about the fact that they are wanting to spray the sky with basically chemicals to protect the earth, in effect, from the sun through climate change, to block out heat. And so it's just what's been happening all along, just given another reason. And again, oh, well, if we're all going to die from climate change, and we got to block out the sun, and so, yeah, you do what you like. Well, actually, it's funny, isn't it? They want to put this stuff, spray this stuff in the atmosphere to block the sun. But when they talk about the causes of climate change, as they call it, global warming, they don't mention the bloody sun. It's a gas without which we'd all die, called carbon dioxide. What does that mean? Why do they do that? Because to target carbon dioxide has enormous numbers of spin-offs for the cult, not least transformation of the global economy, with carbon taxes and all this other stuff. And again, you keep seeing this common theme of immensely rich people driving the climate, this recent case driving this whole idea of a pandemic. And this is the story from this week. Climate rebel tycoon nets tainted millions. How Extinction Rebellion's British hedge fund backer profits from dirty firms. The billionaire helping to bankroll Extinction Rebellion, that wants to transform the world economy, just as the 1% does in exactly the same way, became the world's top hedge fund manager last year thanks to major investments in firms hit by environmental scandals. Sir Chris Hone, who donated £200,000 to the controversial climate change pressure group, and is feared in city boardrooms for putting pressure on companies, saw his investment firm join the ranks of the world's largest hedge funds last year after a stunning performance. And the figures are just staggering. The TCI Fund Management, which is owned and run by Hone, added $8.4 billion, 6.4 billion in value last year, more than any other hedge fund. And this is a guy who is funding Extinction Rebellion. And according to this report in a British newspaper, has been investing in companies with, shall we say, rather doubtful and dodgy environmental histories. So this is where all the censorship comes from. Because if you allow the free flow of all information, not just snippets of it like that story, but the whole where everything's connected, then what's really going on becomes utterly and totally predictable.